You've probably heard the claim that the average American has hundreds of thousands of dollars saved for retirement. It's the kind of headline that makes it seem like everyone else is on track while you're just trying to keep up. But that number doesn't tell the real story. In fact, it can create a false sense of security when many people are actually far behind. The numbers reported by the Federal Reserve paint a very different picture. Once you understand the gap between the figure that gets all the attention and the one that truly reflects how Americans are doing, you'll never look at retirement savings the same way again. And knowing that difference could be one of the most important financial insights you'll ever have. Before we get into the numbers, there's one concept you need to understand because it's the reason so many retirement headlines are misleading. It comes down to two simple words, average and median. The average sounds impressive, but in a country where wealth is highly concentrated, it can be incredibly deceptive. Picture 10 people standing in a room. 9 have saved $10,000 for retirement, while one person is a billionaire. On paper, the average says everyone in that room is a millionaire, but in reality, 9 of them are nowhere close to financial security. That's exactly what happens with retirement statistics. A relatively small number of very wealthy households pull the average much higher than what most Americans actually have. The result is a number that looks encouraging, but doesn't reflect everyday reality. That's why the median matters so much. The median represents the household right in the middle, with half of Americans having more saved and half having less. It's the clearest picture of what a typical family has actually accumulated. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances, the median retirement savings for American households is just $87,000. Not several $100,000, not $1 million, just $87,000. That's the number that represents the typical American household. Let's start with Americans under age 35. The headlines often report that the average retirement savings for this group is around $49,000. If you're in your 20s or early 30s, that might sound encouraging. You may think you're doing just fine and have plenty of time to catch up, but that's where the illusion begins. The median retirement savings for people under 35 is only $18,800. That's more than 60% lower than the average, meaning half of Americans in this age group have less than $20,000 saved for retirement. Now consider another benchmark. Many financial planners recommend having roughly 1 year's salary saved for retirement by age 30. Based on the actual data, most Americans are nowhere close to reaching that milestone. The biggest mistake is assuming time alone will solve the problem. Compound growth is incredibly powerful, but it only works when you give it enough time. The earlier you begin investing, the more your money can grow. Delay too long, and you'll spend years trying to make up for lost time instead of letting your investments do the heavy lifting. So how do you put yourself in a stronger position? If your employer offers a 401k match, contribute enough to receive every dollar of it. That's one of the few opportunities in life where you're offered an immediate return on your money simply for participating. Next, automate your retirement contributions. Instead of depending on motivation every month, have a portion of each paycheck invested automatically before it ever reaches your checking account. And if you're eligible, consider opening a Roth IRA. It remains one of the most valuable retirement accounts available because qualified withdrawals in retirement are tax-free, allowing your investments to grow without future tax bills on those earnings. Your 20s and early 30s aren't simply extra years before retirement. They're the years that can have the greatest impact on your long-term financial future. The decisions you make during this period can dramatically increase your options later in life or leave you spending decades trying to catch up. Now, let's move into the 35 to 44 age group, a stage of life where financial pressure often reaches its peak. This is when many people are juggling mortgage payments, raising children, paying off student loans, and managing growing career responsibilities. Income is often higher than ever, but so are expenses. The average retirement savings reported for this group is about $141,520. At first glance, that sounds encouraging. But once again, the median tells a completely different story. The typical household between ages 35 and 44 has only about $45,000 saved for retirement. Think about what that means. Half of Americans during some of their highest earning years have accumulated less than the price of a new SUV. Meanwhile, many retirement experts suggest that by your 40s, you should have roughly 3 times your annual salary invested for retirement. For the typical household, the reality falls well short of that goal. This is where the gap between perception and reality becomes impossible to ignore. The solution starts with becoming more intentional about every financial decision. When your income increases, resist the urge to immediately upgrade your lifestyle. Instead of letting every raise disappear into bigger monthly expenses, direct most of that increase toward retirement investing. If maximizing your retirement accounts isn't realistic today, increase your contribution rate by just 1 percentage point each year. It's a small adjustment that barely affects your paycheck, but over the course of several decades, it can add hundreds of thousands of dollars to your retirement portfolio. Finally, pay close attention to investment fees. A seemingly harmless 1% annual management fee can quietly reduce your retirement savings by hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. Low-cost index funds allow more of your money to stay invested and working for you instead of being consumed by unnecessary fees. The years when you're balancing work, family, and growing expenses can feel overwhelming, but they can also become the years that transform your financial future. If you can avoid letting every raise disappear into a more expensive lifestyle, you'll give your future self a tremendous advantage. Now we reach the age where retirement stops feeling like something that's decades away and starts becoming a very real deadline. If these numbers are changing the way you think about retirement, take a second to like this video and subscribe. It helps more people discover the facts behind the headlines instead of relying on misleading averages. Let's move to Americans between ages 45 and 54. At this stage, retirement is no longer an abstract goal. It's getting closer every year. The headline number looks encouraging. Average retirement savings for this age group sits around $313,000, but once again, the median tells a completely different story. The typical household has only about $115,000 saved for retirement. With perhaps 10 to 15 of your highest earning years remaining, that's a serious warning sign. Using a conservative 4% withdrawal guideline, a retirement portfolio of $115,000 would generate less than $400 per month in annual retirement income. That's nowhere near enough to support the lifestyle most people hope for. This is the decade when many Americans suddenly realize that the retirement they imagined may not happen unless they make meaningful changes. The good news is that there's still time to improve the outcome, but the window is getting smaller. Once you turn 50, the IRS allows additional catch-up contributions to retirement accounts, giving you the opportunity to invest more than younger workers can. Taking advantage of those higher contribution limits can significantly improve your retirement outlook. Just as important, build a written retirement plan instead of relying on rough estimates. Whether you work with a financial advisor or use a reputable retirement planning calculator, you need to know exactly where you stand, how much you'll likely need, and what steps can close the gap. Finally, stay invested. Market volatility often causes investors to panic at exactly the wrong time. But even in your 50s, your retirement could easily last another 25 or 30 years. Your investments still need time to grow, which means abandoning the market out of fear can become one of the most expensive mistakes you'll ever make. This isn't about panicking. It's about making informed decisions while there's still time to influence the outcome. The choices you make during this decade can dramatically change what retirement looks like. Now let's look at Americans between ages 55 and 64. The average retirement savings jumps to roughly $537,000. At first glance, it appears that people are finally catching up, but once again, averages hide the reality. The median retirement savings for this group is only about $185,000. In other words, half of Americans approaching retirement have less than $185,000 saved to help support what could easily be another 3 decades of life. Surveys consistently show that many Americans believe they'll need well over $1 million to retire comfortably. The typical household has accumulated only a small fraction of that amount. This isn't a small shortfall. It's a massive gap. For millions of Americans, it means continuing to work longer than planned or relying heavily on Social Security throughout retirement. And while Social Security provides an essential source of income, the average retired worker benefit is roughly $23,000 per year. For most households, that's enough to cover basic living expenses, but it leaves little room for rising healthcare costs, travel, home repairs, or unexpected emergencies. So what should you focus on during these years? Maximize every opportunity to increase retirement contributions while you're still earning an income. At this stage, every additional dollar invested has meaningful value. Think carefully about when you'll claim Social Security. Starting benefits as early as age 62 permanently reduces your monthly payments, while delaying benefits until age 70 can substantially increase them. that one decision can have a lasting impact on your lifetime retirement income. Most importantly, take an honest look at your financial reality. That could mean planning to work part-time for a few extra years, downsizing to a less expensive home, or relocating to an area with a lower cost of living. It may not perfectly match the retirement you once imagined, but thoughtful adjustments today can create a retirement that's both financially stable and far less stressful. The years leading up to retirement aren't about giving up. They're about making smart, deliberate decisions while you still have the ability to influence your future. Finally, let's look at Americans who are already retired between ages 65 and 74. The average retirement savings climbs even higher, reaching approximately $609,230. But just as we've seen throughout every age group, the average isn't representative of what most retirees actually have. The median retirement savings is only about $200,000. That means half of retired households are trying to make less than $200,000 last for the remainder of their lives. Using the commonly referenced 4% withdrawal guideline, a portfolio of $200,000 would provide only about $8,000 per year in retirement income, or less than $700 each month. Even after adding the average Social Security benefit, many retirees are living on very narrow financial margins. A major medical expense, higher housing costs, or an unexpected emergency can quickly put enormous pressure on their finances. Many financial planners recommend entering retirement with savings equal to roughly 10 times your final annual salary, which often translates to around $1 million or more, depending on your income and retirement goals. Compared with that benchmark, a retirement portfolio of $200,000 represents only a fraction of what's typically recommended. It's no surprise that surveys consistently find one of retirees' biggest fears is running out of money during retirement, and that's the reality hidden behind the impressive averages. The biggest lesson from all of this is simple. Stop comparing yourself to the average. Average retirement savings is heavily influenced by a relatively small number of extremely wealthy households. It doesn't represent where most Americans actually stand. The average retirement savings number does one thing remarkably well. It convinces people they're doing better than they actually are. It creates a false sense of confidence when, for many Americans, the reality is very different. The number that truly matters isn't the national average, it's your number. How much have you saved? And how does that compare to where you want to be? Many financial planners use simple milestones as a guide: about 1 year's salary saved by age 30, roughly 3 times your salary by 40, around 6 times by 50, 8 times by 60, and approximately 10 times your annual income by the time you retire. These aren't rigid rules or guarantees. They're benchmarks that help you evaluate your progress and identify whether adjustments may be needed. The encouraging part is that no matter where you're starting today, whether you've saved your first $100 or your first $100,000, the path forward follows the same principles. Automate your retirement contributions so investing happens consistently. Increase the amount you save whenever your income grows. Stay invested in assets that have the potential to grow over the long term. And make full use of every employer retirement match and tax-advantaged account available to you. If these numbers make you uncomfortable, that's completely understandable. But don't let that discomfort turn into inaction. Use it as motivation to take control of your financial future. Retirement rarely happens by chance. It happens because of years of consistent decisions, disciplined saving, and thoughtful investing. Your future isn't determined by where you are today. It's determined by the choices you make starting now. If you found this breakdown helpful, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into personal finance, investing, retirement planning, and the money lessons that rarely make the headlines. This is Finance Haven, where financial knowledge becomes confident decisions, and confident decisions build lasting wealth.